Yeah, good morning everyone and welcome to Corporate Finance online classes. This is Dr. Mahesh M. Monjeri, Assistant Professor from Department of Management Studies, SDM College of Engineering and Technology, Dharwad. So dear students, we have come to the last part of the syllabus where we are going to learn about the dividend decisions, the third major decision of a finance manager. So if you can recall, the finance manager deals with three major decisions: investment decision, financing decision, and dividend decisions. And the finance manager is required to take these three decisions in such a way which can maximize shareholders' wealth, because that is the ultimate goal of financial management or corporate finance. So in this regard, first I will share you a small video which summarizes, okay, a very beautiful video, okay, which summarizes all these, the first two decisions, investment decision as well as financing decision, and how they should be taken in order to maximize shareholders' wealth. Also, it explains in brief how dividend decisions affect shareholders' wealth. So after which I will continue with the syllabus. So please pay attention. I'm going to share the screen now. Students, can you see this YouTube page?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you also tell me, can you hear the audio?
The main objective of the finance management.
Yes, sir.
One of the
Yeah,
main
thank
objective
you.
of the finance management is
Please watch carefully and listen. It is slow and very beautifully put. So 2 to 3 chapters what I studied under investment decision, it just put it in a nutshell within 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, so same way for financing decision, same way for dividend decisions, which we are going to learn today.
one of the main objective of the finance management is wealth maximization. When we say wealth maximization, it is the maximization of wealth of the owners of the business. So, how this wealth maximization is possible? The wealth maximization is possible by taking correct investment decisions, correct financing decisions, and correct dividend decision. So what are all this? We'll see one by one. First, we'll focus on investment decision. Investment decision is nothing but selecting the correct assets for the business. The assets can be two types. One, it can be long term, the other one can be short term. So if you are selecting a long term asset, that selection should be after a careful study of the capital budgeting exercise. Similarly, if the company goes for short term assets, or I would say current assets, that should be, which is for working capital purposes, should be after considering the working capital policy of the business. So what is the working capital policy? Like, if there is a sales department, they should have a policy on giving credit to the customers. If there is a production department, they should have a policy on keeping the inventory levels, because these only constitutes the working capital assets, the debtors, the inventory, the advances. So what is the policy, how long they are going to keep? So if that policy is set out, then the deployment of funds in current assets will be more meaningful and would generate more cash flow for the company. So this is what in all about investment decision. So if there is a focus on long-term assets, it should be after capital budgeting, and if there is a deployment on current assets, it should be as per working capital policy. The next one is financing decision. So what is financing decision? Financing decision is basically raising the optimum funds for the business, which can be either fixed, or it can be working capital, or it can be in combination. So financing decision is basically raising the optimum funds. Why raising the optimum funds is considered as one of the important decisions? Because the funds which have not come in at the right time would jeopardize the entire business operations. So raising the funds is very important, and it should be in an optimum combination. That is, it can be a fixed and working capital combination. So the finance manager should know all the sources of finance. He should be able to raise the debt funds and the equity funds in an optimum mix. And the finance manager should know the distinction between the profit and cash. It's not that all profits can make cash, and it's not that all cash available or profit. So he should understand the difference between them, and he should also be able to evaluate the risk in financing. There could be a financial risk which can arise because of high debt, and there could be hedging risk which could arise on account of foreign exchange fluctuations. He should be able to understand all this. And the next important decision for wealth maximization is dividend decision. We know that only the profits can be given as dividend to the owners. But what do they expect? What do the owners expect? Do they expect capital appreciation, or they are expecting regular income? We should understand, or the finance manager should strike a balance between the people expecting appreciation and regular income, and he should take a decision how much should be paid as dividend and how much should be retained, so that you are meeting expectation of both the groups. And this is one of the important financing decision all as well. So we understand that wealth maximization is a combination of correct investment decision, correct financing decision, and correct dividend decision.
Grammarly can help you write quickly and confidently.
Okay, so are you able to understand the entire syllabus put into a nutshell within 4.5 minutes? Okay, yes, Rujana, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so how are the video? How are the inputs?
Sir, it is about all syllabus is covered in it, sir.
In 4 minutes, very good. Okay, so what we have learned in class, is it same or it is different?
Yes, sir, it is same, sir.
Okay, so dear students, this is how, okay, you can actually make your basics stronger by learning the basic concepts or fundamentals properly. Okay, so there is absolutely no deviation, and whatever we have learned the same way. Okay, it's one of the chartered accountants, okay, so who has made this small video. Okay. So to explain how the investment decision, financing decision, and dividend decision results in shareholders wealth maximization, or how they affect shareholders wealth maximization. And one more small query, Nagashri, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the teacher in the video was referring about wealth maximization of owners or dividend paid to owners. Okay, what is the other term? Who are these owners? Okay, Manjunath, can you hear me? Sankalp, okay, Nagashri cannot hear properly. Her voice is also not audible to us clearly. Okay, Sankalp is also not answering. Chinmay, can you hear me? Shivakumar. Shivakumar. Shivakumar, can you hear me? Okay. Ganesh.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So who are owners? What do you mean by owners in this case?
Sir, stakeholders or shareholders?
Yeah. Which type of shareholders?
Equity, sir.
Okay, very good. Okay, so when you refer the word owners in financial management or corporate finance, it means they are equity shareholders. Equity shareholders are referred to as the owners of the company. Okay, so with this background, okay, now let us go ahead and learn about dividend decisions and how it affects the shareholders' wealth. Okay, students, can you see this PowerPoint slide? Hello.
No, sir.
Sorry?
It is not visible, sir.
Okay, 1 minute. How about now?
No, sir.
Okay, so
No, sir.
okay, I'll make a new share only. How about now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It is visible, sir.
It is now visible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay. So now we have the background of what is the dividend policy and how it affects shareholders' wealth maximization. So in this chapter, we are going to learn about two topics. One is about dividend policy, and second, the factors influencing dividend decisions. So the finance manager, before making a dividend decision, must consider the impact of these factors upon the dividend decisions so that he makes the correct decision, as we saw in the video. The finance manager should make the correct dividend decisions which can maximize shareholders' wealth. Now some basics. What is a dividend policy? A dividend policy involves decision to pay out earnings as dividends or to retain them for reinvestment. We saw this in the video. So dividend on equity shares is not mandatory by law. So a company can pay out the earnings in the form of dividends to equity shareholders, or the company can retain these earnings for the purpose of reinvestment. So that policy itself is called a dividend policy. The decision to pay out earnings as dividend or the decision to retain the earnings is referred to as dividend policy. Then what are the factors that determine dividend policy? Okay, so there are certain decisions, okay, like whether the company should pay the dividend or they should retain the earnings for the purpose of reinvestment. This decision will be affected by these factors. Then if the company decides to pay out a dividend, how much dividend to pay? Again, it is affected by these factors. So if the company decides to pay dividend, okay, in which method to use to pay out the dividend? So this decision is also again affected by factors like these. So I hope you are able to understand in brief how these factors affect the dividend policy or dividend decisions. The factors that determine the dividend policy or the factors that affect the dividend policy are dividend payout ratio, popularly known as a DP ratio, stability of dividends, legal, contractual, and internal constraints and restrictions, owners' considerations, capital market considerations, and inflation. So while making a dividend decision or determining a dividend policy, the finance manager must consider the impact of these factors upon the dividend policy in order to arrive at a sound dividend policy or a correct dividend policy, because Dividend policy is going to affect the wealth of the shareholders. And the ultimate goal of the financial management or corporate finance is maximizing shareholders' wealth. So with this background, let's go ahead with the first factor. Dividend payout ratio. Okay, so what is it and how it affects? We are going to learn now. The dividend payout ratio indicates the percentage share of net earnings distributed to the equity shareholders as dividends. It's quite simple. Say if there are 1 lakh rupee net earnings, simple example, or let us say 1000 crore rupee net earnings. So out of 1000 crore rupee net earnings, what percentage of these earnings should be distributed as dividend to equity shareholders is referred to as a DP ratio or dividend payout ratio. It is easy to understand. Given the objective of wealth maximization, remember always the way you are taught, okay, very beautifully, very systematically and professionally, okay, you can become one of the finest finance students, okay, in North Karnataka at least. Okay, if you learn properly what I have taught you and if you retain the resources what I have shared with you all. So given the objective of wealth maximization, the DPA ratio should be such that it can maximize the wealth of its owners. Owner means equity shareholders in the long run. Okay, what companies do in generally, or what investors expect in general. So in practice, investors, that is equity shareholders in general, have a clear-cut preference for dividends. So equity shareholders prefer dividends, cash dividends, because of uncertainty and imperfect capital markets. Tomorrow, even if you invest in equity shares of a company, you may prefer cash dividends compared to capital appreciation. Therefore, a low dividend payout ratio may cause a decline in share prices because investors may prefer to purchase shares of that company whose dividend payout ratio is higher. Okay, because assuming that these investors prefer dividends and not capital appreciation. So in such a case, a low dividend payout ratio may cause a decline in share price and which will bring down the wealth of the shareholders, while a high ratio may lead to a rise in the market price of the shares. Okay, so after your semester 3, it can be one of the topics for your project. Okay, if you have really learned from me, if you are really my finance management student, remember this, and I expect one student to undertake a project after semester 3, research project on this, what I'm going to tell now. So it is impact of dividend policy on shareholders' wealth. Okay, impact of dividend policy on shareholders' wealth. How you can undertake this study? Okay, so you definitely need to choose a company. It is mandatory. Okay, but you have to consider some 5 industries. Okay, and 5 companies, like from banking. Okay, HDFC Bank, for example, from insurance, LIC, for example. Okay, then from FMCG, Hindustan Unilever, for example. Okay, cement, ACC Cement, for example. Software, TCS, for example. So 10-year data will be available in Bombay Stock Exchange website. Okay, or if you join a stock broking company, they will have this data very well aligned. So over a period of 10 years, okay, TCS, for example. So what would have been their DP ratio? Okay, every year. Okay, there will be a graph. And also you can find out what happened to equity shares of a TCS company. So you can find a correlation. So whether the change in the equity share price of TCS is because of the change in the dividend policy of the TCS company. Okay, in simple example, if the TCS would have been consistently increasing the dividend payout ratio, okay, and is there a consistent increase in the equity share prices of TCS company? Okay, you can form a hypothesis and you can test it very easily and very high quality. Okay, research study you can make. Okay, you can also make a research paper out of it and publish it in a journal. You can go out for presentations and make the presentation on your topic, you can make a video of that and leave it in YouTube. Okay, there are n number of ways to publicize your work. Okay, so I hope you heard me. Anyone who heard me? Nobody heard me. Okay.
Word, sir.
Okay. Thank God. I don't believe, but okay, for your sake. Somebody heard me at least. Okay, and I hope you understood the way I am teaching you. Okay, to excel in future as well, not only now. Okay. So here is the DP ratio of Reliance Industries Limited. Okay, the way I explained, I gave example of TCS. Okay, so here the DP ratio of Reliance Industries Limited, which is summarized in Exhibit 31.1. So from 2012, sorry, here this is upwards from 2005 to 2012. Okay. The dividend payout ratio of Reliance Industries Limited, okay, in 2005 was 15.79. In 2016, it increased to 17.52. 2007, 13.75 decreased. 2008 further decreased. 2009 again increased to 14.5. 2010 14.97. 2011 13.66. 2012 14.68. Okay, the dividend payout ratio of Reliance Industries Limited in the year 2012 was 14.68%. What does it mean? Reliance Industries Limited paid 14.68% of their earnings as a dividend to equity shareholders. Okay, so now if you can also find out the equity share prices of Reliance Industries Limited from 2005 to 2012, okay, you can find out a correlation. You can use chi-square and test the hypothesis. Okay, whether the equity share prices of this company were dependent on the dividend payout ratio of the company. Okay, so very beautiful project you can undertake. Okay, so before I go ahead with the second factor, I would like to take attendance. So I'll stop sharing here. Okay, so students, give your attendance properly. I hope at least my attendance call will be audible to you. Don't keep quiet for your attendance. Because whenever I ask something, say something, you don't respond. But for attendance, please definitely you must respond. 7. Abhijit.
Yes, sir.
Okay, am I audible now, Abhijit?
Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Abhishek. Align.
Present, sir.
Amrut. Anagha.
Present, sir.
Anusha. Anusha Achari. Anushri. Ashwini.
Present, sir.
Asra.
Yes, sir.
Swati.
Yes, sir.
Balappa. Bharti.
Yes, sir.
Chinmayi.
So she is present.
Deepa.
Yes, sir.
Doddabasaya.
Sir, Dodbasaya present, sir.
Yes, thank you. Ganesh.
And sir.
Iranna.
Sir,
Shrikant.
Iran also present, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Shrikant. Shrikant is present or absent? Karthik.
Present, sir.
Lakshmikant.
Yes, sir.
Manjula.
Yes, sir.
Manjunath.
Present, sir.
Manjunath, can you hear me now?
Present. sir, here.
When asking question, you are not able to hear me, right?
Yes, sir. Network.
Very good, correct. Muttava,
Present, sir.
Nagamegha,
Present, sir.
Nagraj,
Present, sir.
Nagashri, yeah, she is present. Sakshi,
Sir, she is present, sir.
Pavan,
Present, sir.
Pavitra, Pooja Ballari,
Present, sir.
Pooja Jian,
Present, sir.
Pooja Kadam,
Present, sir.
Purna.
She is there, sir.
Thank you. Pradnya, Praveen,
Present, sir.
Puneet, Rakesh,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ruchita,
Yes, sir.
Keshav. Keshav is not present. Sahana,
He is present. Yes, sir.
yeah, Keshav is marked present. Sahana,
Yes, sir.
Samiksha,
Present, sir.
Sanjana, absent. Sankalp,
So she was present, sir.
she was present. Thank you. Sankalp, Sanket Kumar,
Yes, sir.
Shilpa MN,
Present, sir.
Shilpa Ganji,
Present, sir.
Shiva Kumar,
Sir, he is present, sir.
okay. Shruti,
Present, sir.
Saurabh, Srujana,
Yes, sir.
Suman,
Present, sir.
Sumukh, Sushmita,
Present, sir.
Swati Pola,
Present, sir.
Tabassum,
Yes, sir.
Uday Kumar,
He is present, sir.
Vaishnavi, Varsha,
Present, sir.
Vedesh. Vedesh is not present. Okay. Nishad,
Sir, Pavitra present, sir.
Pavitra.
Sir, roll number 8, sir.
Yeah, 1 minute. First Pavitra. Yeah, Pavitra present. Then USN. USN now roll numbers are gone. USN.
8, sir.
USN 8. 1 minute. Anushri Angadi.
Yes, sir.
Okay, next.
37, sir.
Amrut is also seen now. Amrut.
Yes, sir. 4.
Then who else?
37, sir.
37. 37. Puneet is marked present. I heard you. Okay. Next. Okay. So everybody gave attendance. That's good. Let's go ahead with syllabus. Students, can you see this PowerPoint slide?
Sir.
You can see, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so any questions so far? Whatever we saw video, we discussed about dividend. Okay, then we discuss about the first factor, that is DP ratio or dividend payout ratio. Yeah, any questions you have or any additional information you'd like to add? Okay, so I'll take that as a no. So let's go ahead to the second factor and let us learn what is it and how it affects dividend policy. The second factor that influences or affects the dividend policy is stability of dividends. Stable dividend policy refers to the consistency or lack of variability in the stream of dividends. In simple words, if a company is consistently paying dividend without any deviation, we call it the dividend policy is stable. But if in some years company has paid a high dividend, in some years the company has paid a low dividend, in some years the company has paid a no dividend, it means we say the dividend policy of the company is not stable. Okay, so please remember. And as a matter of fact, investors are interested to purchase equity shares of that company whose dividend policy is stable over a period of time. Definitely, you don't want to purchase equity shares of such a company, okay, which has paid a dividend in some years high, in some years low, and in some years no dividend, which lacks stability. So stable dividend policy refers to the consistency or lack of variability in the stream of dividends. That is, a certain minimum amount of dividend is paid out regularly without fail. So there are three forms of stability of dividend which we can learn here. The first one is the constant dividend per share. Second is the constant DP ratio. And third is the constant dividend per share plus extra dividend. Okay. So we are going to learn about these forms of stability of dividend. The first one is a constant dividend per share policy. It is a policy of paying a certain fixed amount per share as dividend. The company determines some amount. So every year, irrespective of the earnings of the company decides to pay certain amount which is fixed, okay, per share to the equity shareholder. So this ensures very high stability of dividends. Okay, so companies make such decisions where majority of or very significant percentage of its equity shareholders expect a regular dividend. So in such a case, definitely it helps influence the market prices of the equity shares in a positive way. Second is a constant or a target payout ratio. So in constant dividend per share policy, the company decides certain amount which is fixed, okay, per share, which is paid out as a dividend year after year. So here we're talking about rupees. Say for example, for a 100 rupee share, 5 rupee per share is fixed. So every year the company will distribute 5 rupee per share. That is a constant dividend per share policy. In a constant payout ratio, company determines on certain percentage. Okay, certain percentage. So constant payout ratio is the policy to pay a constant percentage of net earnings. Let us say 5% of the net earnings will be distributed as a dividend to equity shareholders. Okay, in each dividend period. Now they just apply our common sense, okay, or general knowledge. So what is the disadvantage of first policy? Okay, okay, and what is the advantage of second policy? Who will explain? Yes, who will attempt? Just by looking at that, you will be able to understand. What is the disadvantage of first policy? Where in my example, a company decides to pay 5 rupees per share as a dividend each year. And in second policy, the company decides to pay, let us say, some 5% of net earnings to be distributed as a dividend to equity shareholder?
Sir, in first disadvantage is if there is any loss, they should pay through their own, sir.
See, we are not talking about from company point of view. This all discussion is from investor point of view. Investor will be happy, no? Even if company is making loss, he will receive still 5 rupee per share. These decisions are made from the investor point of view, where it should encourage more and more investors to purchase equity shares of their company. Yeah, but you made an attempt. Good. Okay. See, in constant dividend per share, 5 rupees per share, for example, what will happen if the company has made huge profits, excess profits? In that case, equity shareholders will not get extra dividend. They'll get only 5 rupees per share. That's the disadvantage. Okay, the advantage of dividend payout ratio is, so in the year in which the company makes more earnings or more profit, 5% of that profit. So the dividend equity shareholders also earn more dividend. Okay, say for example, we'll consider the company has made a 1000 rupee profit. Okay, the company has been making 500 rupee profit. Let us imagine the company has been making 100 rupee profit per year. Let us imagine, and the company pays 5 rupees per share as a dividend. Okay, and if the company makes 1000 rupee profit also, it will pay 5 rupee per share only. But in payout ratio, what will happen if the company decides to pay 5% of the net earnings? When the company is earning 100 rupee profit, it will distribute 5 rupee as dividend. When the company earns 1000 rupee, 5% of 1000 is 50 rupees they will distribute as a dividend. So equity shareholders will get more dividend, but it can affect in reverse way also. When the company has losses, okay, these shareholders will not get any dividend in second policy. So that's why a balanced policy is also there. Stable rupee plus extra dividend is a policy based on paying fixed dividend, let us say 5 rupees per share every year to shareholders, supplemented by an additional dividend when earnings warrant it. In case the year in which the company makes additional profit, along with the minimum fixed rate of 5 rupee per dividend, they can pay some extra dividend per share, 5 rupee plus whatever is the extra profit made by the company. So this overcomes the disadvantages of both the types of earlier policies. So of the three forms of dividend, constant dividend per share is most appropriate from both point of view. So dear students, the meeting will get over in less than a minute. I have to attend a board of evaluation meeting, so I will not be continuing till 11 o'clock.